Welcome to another podcast from the Wells Point. I was failing French class in high school, and I needed a class to transfer into to maintain my grade point average.
For photojournalist David Wells, discovering his calling came quite by accident.
I transferred into what was then called industrial arts. You drill some holes in some wood, you drill some holes in some metal, and you put a piece of photo paper in the chemicals, and the image comes up, and that magical thing happens, and that was when I got hooked.
That simple start led David Wells to begin his career as a newspaper photographer.
I worked for other people for about 5 years, from 1980 to 1985, small newspapers, large newspapers. I worked briefly for United Press International Wire Service, and I was trying to find a place where I could work to do what I wanted and also obviously get paid, and I never found that, so I became a freelancer.
What Wells wanted to do was to explore issues and subjects in greater detail.
I don't know, I just feeling like that one picture wasn't telling the story. And there are great photojournalists who really are good at getting everything into one picture. But I'm really interested, kind of like in film or a novel, you see character development or a group of people develop or maybe a family develop, but there's an evolution that goes on. And so I'm more interested in that longer storytelling than a single one-off photo. Though I do plenty of single, essentially one-off photos because that's what most assignment work is.
Wells got the opportunity to pursue his vision when his proposal to photograph the Arab-Israeli conflict in a different way won him a grant from the MacArthur Foundation.
When the DHL came, in fact, I'm getting choked up now, it's just so exciting just to think, my God, they got it. And probably more importantly, I now have $24,800, which at that point in time was a lot of money, to do this project on my own for the next 2 years. The hardest part about that project by far was figuring out what was I going to say about the conflict between Israelis and Palestinians that a lot of people hadn't already said. And what I came up with is that they're, of course, in conflict, but they also coexist, and sometimes they even cooperate. And sometimes the same people can do that same thing in one 24-hour stretch.
Wells' unique approach won him more grants, and he used them to explore his subjects in depth.
I think probably the first couple grants that I got made me realize, A, that I don't know if I'd arrived, but I'd reached a level of skill and a level where the outside people were sort of looking at the work and saying it's valuable, we think this is important, it should be continued.
From India's globalization, to Asian immigrants in America, to the dangers faced by California farm workers, Wells has focused his lens on the daily lives of ordinary people struggling to survive in their changing environments.
I think probably the common thread, and it really is only something I've been able to understand recently, is looking at an issue that a lot of people are sort of thinking about and talking about, but coming at it from a different way. I mean, the Pesticide Poisoning of Farm Workers Project, people think of it initially when I describe it as that it's about food safety and it's about the food we eat. It's not really about that. It's really about the children of farm workers who are getting poisoned. And that whole story is what became the beginning of the story. And the sort of end of the story was these growers telling me that the only way the growers can do what the consumer demands, and the consumer demands perfect produce, year-round, beautiful looking, dirt cheap. And the only way you do that is with chemicals. It's not possible otherwise.
A decade ago, Wells' commitment to his work led him to take his art into the classroom.
I think we've all been encouraged to pick a particular subject and then really work it a lot more. Most of us are jumping, and for me to some degree also.
I've never taken this many photos in this little amount of time.
Well, that's good.
Instead of really working a particular subject from a lot of different angles and different focuses and maybe some reflections, we might take one or two shots and then go on to something else. And he's really suggesting that we do fewer subjects more intensely.
Now that I've been doing it for a while, I love teaching. I love the sort of light bulb going off in their head thing. My mother was also a school teacher, and though I didn't end up being a school teacher, I think in a way it's honoring sort of what she did and her ideas of sort of helping people.
Is that a hat?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's Chinese, Performance Office China.
It's easy for him to spot with many of us, since our level is not professional, to spot where our weaknesses are and to try to keep us from going off, straying too far off a path when we need to stay focused on a path.
I tell my students, and this is really absolutely true, the photography is easy. Understanding the sort of question, what it is they want to say, what the history is, what's the background, what's the bigger picture, that's the hardest part. And I guess I don't want to feel like this. The stories that I do don't have a fully drawn out or developed background and basis.
Wells hopes that his work inspires viewers to look more closely at the world around them.
If I'd like people to take something away, I suppose that both bodies of work are linked by the idea of looking at something differently. Whether it's sort of a found light event, the way a piece of light hits something, color or a gesture somebody makes, or if you're looking at a political topic differently. It's kind of the same thing. I hope people look at the world a little bit differently. I hope this improves your photography, and I hope you'll join me for the next podcast.